Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
And away we do go, Kevin O'Connell. Purple Access, it's Judd. It is Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune sports columnist, and Ross Brendel producing the show as always. Chipper, I want to start you off with this one. Kirk Cousins returned to U.S. Bank Stadium on Sunday as the quarterback for the 6-6 Falcons. He's coming off tying for his career high with 4 picks. Been a very up and down year. What is your expectation? Because it's been niceties all week between both sides. What is your expectation about there's no hate here, but the competitiveness, will to want to win from the Cousins side, and then just as importantly from Kevin O'Connell, who we all know is competitive as hell.
Yeah, they can say all the nice things they want about their friendship and their time together, but Cousins is going to get booed, and you got to imagine he's going to want nothing more than to come in here and try to win and put on a good show, and vice versa. I'm sure Brian Flores is going to try to blitz the heck out of him and have him throw a couple picks to his guys. So it should be a great scene, great environment. I just, coming off a 4-pick performance, and I didn't watch the whole game, but I saw the one he just kind of like floated down the middle towards the end zone. I got to imagine Cousins is embarrassed by that performance, and also Flores is probably going to try to create all kinds of different blitz packages to get him rattled.
Now, I actually penned a column, cheap plug, for the Zulgad Substack last night.
Substack, baby.
That I've decided on the Substacky, I've decided that Vikings fans should cheer Kirk. Because if you look at the confluence of events that led to his departure,
that's it.
Now,
that's it.
I was all for him getting the money elsewhere, and he did, and that's Kirk.
Yeah.
But I did not realize the tentacles that would come off of that decision. And Royce is convinced that nobody within the Vikings wanted Kirk back. I don't know. I don't buy that necessarily. I think O'Connell would have taken him back at the right price. Yes. I think Kevin genuinely likes him. And I think that he also had success, and I don't know that you chase away a quarterback who's had success with you. But all of that being said, the fact that Kirk left, now he is still, believe it or not, the highest cap hit because his dead cap hit on the 24 books is so high, but he comes off in 25. It allowed you to sign a bunch of guys who you could basically push their money into the future, but that's fine. But you get Grenard, you get Van Ginkel, you get Aaron Jones. Exactly. Cashman. That's one tentacle. The other is this, though. As long as it was KO and Kirk Cousins, we said, okay, Kevin O'Connell's done a great job with Kirk, but Kirk statistically is a good quarterback, and he was fringe top 10. He has now taken Sam Darnold and proven with Sam Darnold that he can take a guy who's considered dead and buried as a quarterback and revive him. I just think the amount of tentacles that come off of Cousins' decision to leave Chipper are enormous, because it has proven so many things about the Vikings that we simply couldn't have known without Kirk deciding to go elsewhere.
Yeah, and we don't know this one yet, but you took the Band-Aid off and forced yourself to go find a quarterback of the future, which you had to do that eventually, right? When we saw the dollar figures, I don't even think it was a hard decision at that point. I think it was like, Kirk, good luck to you. Go get your money. We enjoyed our time together, but that, in some ways, I think it made it easy for Kwesi and them that it was what they were offering was so different.
Yes.
But you're right. And this was always the argument with Cousins, is that he ate up so much of the cap that you couldn't address other issues in a meaningful way, other positions. And yes, you look at the number of guys they went out and signed that are impactful. And I would say, if you look statistically, they have a top 10 quarterback right now in Darnold, right?
Well, yeah, because of the coaching staff large.
Because of the coaching, yeah. I mean, if you look at statistically, it's hard to argue with the stats. I mean, and they're better than what Cousins has. His stats are better than Cousins. And so Yeah, in some ways, it was the best case scenario, much like when Diggs forces his way out of here and you wind up with Justin Jefferson.
Point.
It's like,
You're right.
it's like at the time you're like, man, he's a productive receiver. You're getting rid of him, and I know there's all that, but and then you wind up with Justin Jefferson, who's been just terrific and bound for the Hall of Fame someday. Yeah, so should they cheer for him? Probably, because they landed in a pretty doggone good spot. But
Right, he helped.
We know how this thing goes. It's like I asked somebody the other day, just I've been here 25 years in Minnesota. Who is a more polarizing athlete? And this is not personality or anything like that, because I don't know anybody who doesn't like Kirk as a person and what who he is and just his personality. But just a more polarizing. On this side, you have strong defenders. On this side, you have strong critics.
The Vikings won. The Vikings one that came right to mind, but he didn't play the position. And in this case, the position is important.
Yeah.
Was Moss. So when Moss came back with Oakland, and if you recall, his stint in Oakland didn't go well. And so it was sort of a shrug on that. Maurer was now the Maurer thing though, it's weird because we're a weird town. Like Cousins was polarizing for both football and political stances.
Well, that
Joe.
I think it was the money
Joe's
too. I think it was the.
Oh yeah.
I think the money too.
Well, and Cousins' defenders were over the top at times. So it's like you got to be kidding me. And now and I said for a long time I thought that Cousins' staunchest defenders were not Vikings fans. And they're all like, yeah, we like the Vikings, and now they're all gone. I can't find them anywhere. Yeah. They're all either with the Falcons or they just stopped watching football. I don't know. Yeah. But in his own way, I mean, Joe Maurer was incredibly polarizing, which is sort of weird because he is as nice a milk toast human as you can find. I think Cousins sort of takes the cake in what you're talking about.
I do too. Yeah, and I mean, obviously the vaccination during COVID that created another layer. But I think his was more, they were stuck, right? Or they felt stuck because they felt stuck. I don't think that they were, but they felt it. And I understood it because teams get the quarterback thing wrong so often. And like when you have one, but then you look at his salary and what you were getting for it,
right. You
got one playoff win. Now I know for all quarterback, there's other factors that go into that, right? But his salary prevented you from. We could just talk yourself in circles on this thing.
The reality is the current administration was not stuck. Spielman was stuck. Yes, Spielman decided. The problem with Kirk is somehow the narrative got out of whack, and I don't know why. Kirk Cousins, and by the way, when Kirk signed the original contract, I applauded it.
Yes,
they had a Super Bowl ready team. Like you took it out of the freezer, you put it in the microwave in 2018, and you went to the Super Bowl. And the reality was everybody knew that Case Keenum was a 1-year blip. Yeah, so they're like, okay, we're not going to do that. Rick literally said, unless you want to say Teddy was going to succeed until the sad end of, or what proved to be the end, Rick said, okay, I'm done. I can't find one. I just don't know what I'm doing here. I've heard Rick subsequently say, if I could have found a quarterback, I'd still be employed. And he's right. So they were stuck with Rick and Zimmer. When the Vikings, when they switched to Kwesi and then more importantly, Kevin O'Connell, they weren't stuck. We just felt like, oh my God, they're not going to find a quarterback now. It's got to be Kirk. It's got to be Kirk. But here's the funny thing. We're such hypocrites. We're so dumb sometimes. Now we're stuck on, you can't let Darnold go. How can you let, it's like, no, this is all designed. Like just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's preordained that Sam freaking Darnold should get a 3-year multi-million-dollar contract, which he will.
That's it. I mean, that's become the narratives. Like, let's say this continues. Let's say they make a playoff, I don't even know, run, parent, whatever. It's like, what do you do with Darnold? It's like, you go to him and say, I'll give you 1 year, $20 million, which you'll turn down.
Right.
But other than that, like the whole premise of drafting a quarterback was, I think somebody,
and he was,
I think there's a team that will give him 3 years at
Yes,
whatever.
of course.
Yeah.
80, 75, 80 million, whatever it is.
Of course there is.
Nobody should feel bad for Sam Darnold. He knew that this was the deal when he signed it,
But
that 99.9% sure he wouldn't be back.
This has nothing to do with Sam. This has to do with our paranoia about how you've got a quarterback now. You found one. Listen, you found one because the coach can develop them. And by the way, the incompetence of the previous coaching staffs, look, we never credited this, Chipper, but the reality was in 2017, when Keenum was so good, I've never seen a Vikings OC, now KO's head coach, but I've never seen an OC have as good a year as Pat Shurmur did. Pat Shurmur gets a lot of credit.
Really good year. Yeah.
But we're thinking, oh my God, you found Case Keenum's a good quarterback now. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. But now we're into this Darnold. And these are the same folks who after the Jacksonville game said, okay, he's now hit his, that's it for Sam Darnold. So yeah, it's ridiculous, Chip.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of quarterbacks, the Daniel Jones thing.
Yeah.
How much work can KO give him during the season?
Well, I think
attention and hands-on like he's done with Darnold. I mean, can he really do that in the season during practice?
I think what this is a very the Darnold.
I like the move.
Oh yeah, the Darnold thing. Well, I think the answer to your question is fairly in depth. First of all, I think that this move is done predicated on obviously what Darnold has done, because it's like, okay, hold on a second, because I mean Sam Darnold was written off. He was in the graveyard of quarterbacks, and I also think that the year with Shanahan in San Francisco helped Sam a lot. I think this is sort of like that, which is, first of all, playing right now for Daniel Jones anywhere makes no sense.
Yeah.
So you get the look-see here, right? The secret sauce, a look behind the curtain. And then I think that there's a fighting chance that Daniel Jones is the backup next year here on a 1-year contract again.
Yeah.
So I think it also makes sense. Now, he could leave. I mean, hell, he could leave today and go sign to a 53. But the reality is, and this is something else you would have never developed if Kirk stays. The reality is the Vikings will now be seen in that small group of teams that are blessed with quarterback rehabilitation centers.
Yeah, well, that's it. I'm just curious. Like, I mean, you're going through the individual reps and the footwork and eyes and all the things that O'Connell talks about. But I'm curious of like how much, like really hands-on stuff does a practice squad quarterback get during a game week when you're getting Sam ready? I mean, I don't even know how much.
Oh, you don't
the
get
backups get. Yeah, I mean, you're not getting any reps, but it's film room stuff, I guess, right?
I think it's film room stuff. I also think that we are selling probably way short the impact of Josh McCown on this entire thing, who I think has all day to work with you. I don't think that's and look, I don't think that this is just a KO thing. I think this is a lot of people. But
what is? Yeah.
They've got 5 QBs. They've got a head coach who cares about them. They've got an OC. They've got a quarterback's coach, and then they have another, at the very least, assistant. So they literally almost have one-on-one tutoring.
It is, yeah. And I was talking to a team employee yesterday about Josh McCown. It'll be interesting to see. Does he get a head coaching interview this offseason, you think?
I think definitely does. I think he definitely 100%.
Or an OC opportunity, or at least interview.
He might. He might. I mean, I would.
You think he leapfrogs from that? You think he leapfrogs from where he's at now to head coach?
Well, remember the Texans almost hired him until they got backlash a handful of years ago.
So I don't
think it's that far fetched that he would get that type of leapfrog or at least a coordinator.
But he could get the job. I would not be absolutely shocked if he does not get a head coaching sniff or a job, Chipper, if he actually got the OC job here. Yeah. Just to get him more, he clearly has been very, very good. And if you watch him on game days, he does not work the sidelines like a quarterback's coach.
No, he works it. Yeah. I mean, you see it a lot on the team issued social media videos. I mean, him and Sam, you could tell, man, is there's a relationship there that that has put a lot of time into it. I mean, you could just see the communication they have, the trust, all that, just on those little snippets on those videos. And then you hear stuff behind the scenes. So I go back to, and this is a credit to KO too. He's assembled a hell of a staff, man.
Yeah, yeah. He's got a DC who's basically the head coach of his defense.
Yeah.
He's got a quarterbacks coach who had a far longer and more successful career quarterback than he did. Like his confidence in himself is pretty damn high, and it's weird because he has some insecurities, but I don't think working with qualified people is a problem. But yeah, I think what Daniel Jones is going to get is the insight of how the building works, which is incredibly important.
Yeah, and if you could get him as on a backup 1-year deal as a safety net for whatever, if McCarthy's either not healthy or not where you want him, or I mean, I think that seems like the plan, because it's not like Daniel Jones is going to go out into the market and get a big deal somewhere. I mean, that's not happening.
No.
So he has to do that rehabilitation deal, the 1 year, like you're saying, and then figure out where it goes from there.
But I think you're right. I think Darnold gets 3 years, and I think he gets a good cut. And by the way, I'm not convinced he's going to be successful. I'm not convinced he's successful. He's got to be very careful, in my opinion, where he picks.
That is interesting, Judd, because it's going to be a fascinating thing for him, because obviously we talked about it coming in here. Perfect situation with him for all the reasons, KO, Jefferson, line, whatever. So he needs to be probably selective in that. But man, you only get so many bites of the apple in terms of getting the big contract. So how picky can you be? I mean, you're talking about.
Are you going to Vegas?
How much money? What's the difference in money that you would be, what I'm saying? What would you turn down to say that's not a good situation if it's so much more than everything else? I mean, the money's, you only get so many chances at it.
Well, let's just say for a point of reference, the offer is the Baker Mayfield contract. Because I think that's a 330, it's in the 30s.
So
it's not a
3
40s.
for 75 or 3 for 80 or something?
Yeah, it's something like that. But I think that is I think that's the potential contract. And look, I mean, you might be right. I'm just saying, I think he has to be somewhat careful here, because he's got to be smart enough not to buy into that he is totally fixed.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Judd. I wrote about him Sunday from the game. He went through that 3-game stretch where it was London, whoever, Tennessee, or Jacksonville, where we had, the turnovers came back up. And that was the conversation. The Colts, the turnovers were the conversation. And I don't want to say he's, whatever, he's beyond turnovers, but this is 3 games now where he's clean. He had credit for the pitch back to Jones in Tennessee, which I don't know if that was his fault or not. But man, Judge, that was as weird a game Sunday against Arizona. I mean, they were doing nothing. His line was having confusion.
Yep.
And then they get booed there off the field after that 3 and out. And he caught fire, and he started just making passes into tight windows. That throw he made over the linebacker's head to Addison was incredible.
Great throw.
I mean, he was just threading the needle, and just totally under control. And I guess I didn't know how good he was when he came here. I knew he was a high draft pick in there, but man, he has some serious talent.
Yep. Well, he's got the physical gifts. He always has. I don't know he's got the brain, and I think O'Connell's his brain. And I also didn't love the first half. I thought they all had a rough game. Like, I think O'Connell.
They were asleep.
Yeah, that was not a great half. Part of the problem, and this is a potential playoff problem. It's probably worth a discussion. So Aaron Jones fumbles on his first carry. O'Neal recovers it. On the check down, he fumbles. They lose the ball. Look at the rushing stats. KO clearly was like, okay, I can't have this happen. And I don't blame him, but the problem is you can't abandon the run, and they did a little bit. And then the Cardinals had some really exotic blitz packages, which were smart. And the Vikings were just like really slow to adjust. But you're right. In the fourth quarter, when it was nut cutting time, Darnold cuts loose. And there's no question in my mind, his arm talent is better than Kirk's.
Yes.
His arm talent is huge.
Yeah, and I always thought Kirk had a nice arm, but
he does.
I mean, he can really when he's on. I mean, some of the throws he's like, whoa! Like, you don't feel like there's it's not every quarterback's going to be able to make those throws. So, I don't know. He's really impressed me the last couple of weeks, how he's rebounded from the. Because we all said it's like, oh, here we go. How are they going to manage the turnovers now? This is like, you got to, this is a major problem. And whatever he did, I do think when we were in London for that game, I felt like it was Jefferson or bust. I felt like everything was a deep shot to Jefferson. Jones was out, but there was really nothing intermediate. They didn't have Hawkinson yet.
Right.
And Addison was kind of disappearing. Was he hurt there? I can't remember. But,
I think he played.
But I do think you're starting to see him spread the ball around more and not just be so focused on Jefferson. Now, Jefferson really had a nice game and comeback game, but we're seeing Addison. We're seeing Hawkinson. You're seeing Naylor catch some balls. So I felt like it's starting to spread it around a little bit more now. And Jefferson, I thought Jefferson really adjusted he countered to what he's been, these exotic or whatever coverages he's seen. Instead, he was finding open pockets in that Cardinals zone. And I give the Cardinals credit. I think they had a pretty good scheme. I think they're actually pretty good. I think that defense was good. But I thought Jefferson, like on the fourth down, he sat down in that hole on that 30-yarder. He found a place. He came back. He adjusted. He adjusted. I thought really well.
So the intriguing thing about this entire discussion, and this is why I thought for the most part on Sunday, KO did not have a great game play calling, but I thought against the Bears he was fantastic. And again, I think Darnold does what he's told, and if it breaks down, he's sort of in trouble because KO didn't expect it to break down, Chipper. But the Chicago game I thought was fantastic because the Bears were like the third consecutive team that were like, Justin Jefferson's not going to beat us. And so the Vikings said, okay, that's cool. We'll have Addison beat you, Hawkinson. The Cardinals game, if you go back or if you were potentially at the Jefferson postgame thing, it was really intriguing. Yeah. He talks about they were sort of singling me at times, and it sounded like he didn't come out and say this. He said I said something, but it sounded to me like he said at halftime, what are we doing here? And then if you recall, the first pass of the third quarter was the deep shot that was a PI, which of course he's going to get the benefit of the doubt. So I honestly, I think Darnold's got a really good arm. I think he has ability athletically. But do you remember when I think McVay had just gotten the Rams job. And there was a story about the fact that I think McVay volunteered this up. Jared Goff was his quarterback. And the story was that McVay would look at the defense, diagnose it, and right before the communication system in Goff's helmet shut off, 15 seconds left, he would tell him, okay, here's exactly what you're seeing. Here's what you need to do. O'Connell's not going to come out and say that. I think that's sort of what we have here, though. I really do. So when the ball gets spread around, I think that's O'Connell. When the ball doesn't get spread around, I think that's O'Connell. So I don't, and this is where McCarthy, I don't think is going to need that. That's why the Darnold thing is a shotgun marriage to me, and the McCarthy one probably has much more sustainability.
Yeah, I don't know that's. I don't know. I don't know how much KO is scripting it to the degree that you think is happening there. I think he's obviously had a huge impact on. Hey, look at this. Watch this coverage. Watch this guy. That type thing. I do think early on, that's why they were getting so many delayed game penalties because
100%.
It was going down too far, and it's like
100%. That's exactly what happened.
But I do get the sense that Darnold's really probably just getting more comfortable with the scheme. It's not an easy scheme. We've heard Cousins talk about it. We heard Jefferson, this is the most complicated scheme. So I think if you're any quarterback, I don't care, young, old, whatever, that it's probably hard to master it. And I just think the more he's in it, the more he gets the idea of what O'Connell wants. I just think he's starting to master it more. And so he's probably just becoming more comfortable with everything too, and being able to play faster.
Absolutely. Well, part of the thing that intrigued me about the Cardinals game was this, though. To your point, sort of, what switch got flipped? Because it all of a sudden looked like a completely different quarterback.
I asked O'Connell that. I said, "You guys get booed off the field there after that 3 and out midway through. It was 8 minutes left." I said, "What?" And then you come back and you score 3 straight times, and he said that he became more aggressive in his play calling, and he felt like they needed a little more risk reward in there. So I don't know if he felt if they're a little bit too safe against what the Cardinals were doing. Now, some of it too was, I think they had 3 sacks on free runners, right? The line wasn't picking it up, and so that
first half
that kills drives. But he said he got more aggressive with the risk reward in his play calling. I don't know if it's a little, hey, let's take some chances here type thing, but
it seemed to be though, right?
But it came. I mean, it's like boom, 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 boom. That one drive, it was 19-6, right? And then they came back to the next drive, and it was just like methodical. But it was like 12 yards, 15 yards, 16 yards. It wasn't the deep shot like way down the field. It was like that intermediate stuff.
To go back to Kirk, I always thought it was, and O'Connell talked about this. He has not talked about this with Sam, but do you remember when he talked about, because Kirk being risk adverse as Kirk was, and that was not O'Connell, that was Kirk. Do you remember when he talked about opportunity balls? And he's like, sometimes you have dumb passes, sometimes you have opportunity balls. Felt like the fourth quarter on Sunday was, let's create some opportunity balls. And you nailed it. I think the prettiest pass of the day was the Addison Laird pass.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Absolutely gorgeous. I don't know a lot of quarterbacks that can throw that ball. That's a dangerous throw.
Yeah.
But again, I think that this is a very much, if nothing else, an in tandem working scheme where O'Connell's like, okay, we're going to have to do this now. Not what I want to do, but we have to. And it worked.
Well, and it's you talk about the opportunity balls too. It's like, I'm sure there's a stat, like Pro Football Focus or somebody keeps this, but how many yards do you think Jefferson has accounted for in pass interference penalties?
Well, against Chicago, it was 50 something, I think.
And I think this past week it was 45. Seems like I wrote that down, I had in my head. So, I mean, you can look at his receiving stats, but if he also has, 40 to 80 yards in pass interference penalties, hell, that's just the same, So
it's the Bears game, Chip.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he caught 2 passes for 27 yards. Actually, he caught 6 for about, 90 yards.
There's so it's I don't know how you'd ever do it, but it's like, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, somehow Jefferson or receivers should get credit for drawing. Now, those are so subjective. We can argue whether it's pass interference or whatever.
But you're
so
right.
It's not fair, but they're drawing them. I mean, that's as good as a catch there when you're getting those yards. And so, so I think there's a little bit of that too. Is like, you don't want to count on pass interference penalties, but if you're going to throw the ball deep more times than not, it's not 50-50 with him. I mean, Jefferson is going to get the benefit of those calls.
The first play, though, of the third quarter to me was genius because you just came out and said, screw it. We're going to go deep for Jefferson. The corner's like, oh, my God. Because so and that's where the adjustment has to come quickly, too, though, is once you see what an opponent's plan is for him, you have to exploit it if you can. And if you can't, like the one thing that disappointed me from O'Connell's standpoint, and he did say specifically we tried to get him involved more early, but, why not start with a quick swing pass to him?
Well, that's it.
Just get him
I wrote
touch.
that. I was telling Mark Craig, because I thought they would do that because I thought they'd do that early in the game because there's so much dialogue about he was a decoy or he opened up things. I'm like,
correct.
Justin Jefferson wants the ball in his hands. I thought they would come out the first play and throw a quick screen to him just to get the ball in his hands. And I think they did that early in the third after that, right? Didn't they throw him a screen?
Yes.
Just to let him touch it.
Third.
And then the crowd came alive, and then he came alive, and then the offense started getting it. So it's like, sometimes if you haven't targeted him, like, just throw him a screen just to get, get his hands on it and kind of get that energy. Because Jefferson has that effect where as soon as he touches it, whether it's a deep ball or whatever, he's going to be excited. The crowd's going to get excited, and then that gives you a jolt.
And what bad is going to happen?
Yeah,
like it's Justin Bleep Jefferson. Like is something going to go wrong? I mean, Aaron Jones is fumbling. That's a worry right now. But yeah, I did think that I thought there was a little bit of stubbornness in seeing what the Cardinals were doing and not adjusting. Yeah. Now you did eventually, and that was fine. But again, I try to look at things with this team at 10-2 through the prism of a playoff game. And in the prism of a playoff game, one, you can't abandon the run completely, but two, you also you have to look at what they're doing to Jefferson and immediately say, okay, here's what we can or can't do. And 6 points in 2 quarters for an offense with the components that this team has is just not enough.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Jones. What's your concern level there? I guess I would be a little more concerned if it was part of his DNA, like his resume, and it hasn't been. So you could tell being in the locker room, he was down. He was disappointed.
I think it has. I think Seifert wrote about this. I believe that there is some concern about the fact that after he hurt his ribs against Jacksonville, he was wearing some type of contraption. And
so
I don't know if he's not getting the ball right, tucked in right. But you know what? Beyond that, like the fumble against San Francisco at the goal line in week 3, right? Or week 2. That was like okay, that's not great, but it's not, but to use your term, it's not part of Aaron Jones's DNA at that point. Well, he now has tied his career high in fumbles and fumbles lost. So like you got to come back and prove this, because clearly the problem is there's not a guy behind him that they're like really comfortable saying, you just go in and play. Yeah. Cam Akers comes in, but he's not going to carry that load. So like you can't go on the road in a playoff game, have Jones fumble, lose that fumble, give up, let's say 3 points, and then be like, okay, full stop on Aaron Jones. You can't, and you can't bench him then. Like you're going to need to do something else.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're going to need him because this offense is just so different when he's in there, and the running game's part of it. And so, hopefully it's just a refocus type thing. It's nothing, beyond that, and it doesn't become an issue. But they can't. They get down the season where you're playing these meaningful games for playoff seeding, and you get to playoffs. You can't be benching Aaron Jones.
No, especially when you really don't trust it. Cam does a nice job, but I mean, there's not that implicit trust with him.
Yeah.
Hey, what's your concern or non-concern about the close games? I feel like we're getting a lot of concern. I will say this: the fact that they have a very nice point differential, which they did not have in 22. Makes me not that worried.
No, I'm not, because was it Seifert or Alec Lewis that had the stat that 80% of the NFL games this year are one-score games?
I did see that somewhere. Yeah,
there's this.
Might have been Seifert.
I don't know where's this percent. I mean, they haven't been clean. They haven't. They've had some times lapses where they let teams in, but like this is what the NFL is. Right. NFL is close games, and you're not going to get style points. Very few teams. I mean, Detroit blows teams out, but very few teams are blowing everybody off the field. Yeah, you would like them to be more dominant and just put teams away and not let them hang around and not start slow or not let teams back in it like at Tennessee. But they're 10-2. This is what the NFL is, and to me, all those one-score games are. And they're really good at them, and I think that's credit to KO and all they do. But what you do in those games determines whether you're a really good team, a good team, an average team, or a bad team. Because there's not much difference. If you watch the NFL, there's not a ton of difference. I mean, I know it's cliched, but the parity is like, this is what the league is, and so the good teams figure out a way to win those games.
The only thing that concerns me about this team. The turnovers. That's the one thing.
Well, that's it. Well, that is the one thing, because if all these games are going to be one-score games, or the majority of them, and they're close, turnover swings it. That's what costs you games. Now, they won with Aaron Jones with the foot, but that's what. But their defense is pretty good at taking the ball away too. I mean, I just looked at it. I think they.
But you still can't fumble. At your own
the goal
15.
line.
It just can't happen.
Well,
yeah, you're right.
How many points has they've lost by fumbling in the red zone or in the end zone this year? It's like unbelievable.
The 49ers game is a rout without the Jones fumble.
Yes.
And like that will bite you. But yeah, close games, and we got a little bit spoiled because they beat the Giants convincingly in week 1, and then they beat San Francisco not convincingly but pretty convincingly, and then they routed Houston, and now you're like, oh, this is a juggernaut, it's going to be easy. And you're right though. You watch it, it's funny because the first half of the Cardinals game, just from an aesthetic view, Chipper, was boring awful and not good.
Yeah.
But if you watch individual games, it's not out of the norm. Like that half is very normal.
I know.
But because like if the Vikings aren't playing and you watch Red Zone, the fourth quarter of the Vikings game is what they show you on Red Zone. And it's like, oh, that was a great game. It's like, it wasn't a great game. It was a pretty ugly.
It was a great half. It was a great half or a great quarter to
exactly.
half a quarter.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
First off, boys, one quick thing, Judd, from a comedic standpoint, I've always thought the NFL should launch another channel that is everything not in the red zone, so you can see all of how hilarious the NFL can be at times and the ineptitude. A couple of quick thoughts for you guys. We've made it 34 minutes into this podcast. You guys buried the lead. Mike Hughes returning to U.S. Bank Stadium this weekend. Thoughts on Mike? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
On Sam Darnold, though, I think one thing that people don't talk about, although you guys kind of alluded to it, is we hear all the time about how complex KOC's offense is and that he was able to come in one offseason, similar to what Kirk Cousins was able to do. But I would argue in year one, he's been better than Kirk Cousins was in year one with Mike Zimmer going all the way back and then year one of KOC. Is that he's been able to grasp the offense and get better almost week by week. And then when he has had those few rough patches in the middle, seemingly those are behind us. If he has another one, it'll be interesting to see what the response is there. So I don't think we give him enough credit for how smart he is. I don't think it's as simple as KOC tells him everything. I do think that's a big part of it, but I don't think we give him enough credit for being able to grasp the offense. And then also just how much his teammates love him. He doesn't come across as the most... I think J.J. McCarthy, Judd, I've heard you talk about this. J.J. shows up and he kind of just has that swagger and that it factor. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Sam Darnold really has that, but in his case, his teammates still gravitate towards him, and you can see that they love him. You see it in some of the post-game stuff, even from Justin Jefferson, when he doesn't have a great game. So I just think the factors of his teammates loving him being comfortable, and I think maybe being smarter than we all give him credit for, has really led to 10-2 more than anything.
Quarterback smarts wise, no, I don't agree. I think he's incredibly talented, and I think he's smart enough. Let's just be clear on the Kirk thing, though, because we've talked about this for a long time. Kirk Cousins is constantly setting himself up to put it in your mind that if he's not successful, here's why.
Yeah,
I've never heard a guy bang the drum more about how difficult this is and how difficult, it's hard to learn. And I knew this offense, but it's nothing like Kirk's always looking, because what Kirk doesn't want to do is come out and directly say, I screwed up, which he will occasionally. But more importantly, he does not want to say, you know what, this offense is a breeze. I love this offense.
This is easy. Yeah.
Be very careful in like incorporating what Kirk said, because I'm not buying that. But yeah, I do think that Sam is well liked. I also think he's a hell of a stopgap, Chip.
Yeah. I mean, Sam's not going to give us reporters. He's not cutting open vein about his past. He's made that clear. I think his time in New York probably taught him about that. And so with us, we're not going to get a lot of more than just kind of surface stuff. But I think behind the scenes with teammates, you can tell he's clearly liked. I mean, I think, you know what players respect? Performance. That's what guys stepping up and performing. And that's how you earn respect in the locker room, by how hard you work, how much effort you put into it, and do you perform on Sundays. And he's doing that. I mean, you can tell the players are like, man, this guy can really, because you hear it all the time. It's like, this guy has a ton of talent. I mean, the way he throws, guys, players respect that. So, yeah, he has a ton of respect from his coaches in there. But in terms of personality, I just don't think he's going to show a lot of that in his time here.
Which is absolutely fine.
That's fine.
Which is absolutely fine. I don't think he wants to play that game, too.
Yeah, he's not interested in that. Yeah,
I've heard behind the scenes McCarthy really doesn't love all of that stuff, but he gets it. Like he's that's the whole thing about a quarterback essentially being the CEO of the football team,
the face of it. Yeah,
I think McCarthy gets everything that goes with that. I think Sam is sort of, I don't know if he's just past it because of what transpired or what, but my biggest thing is, Sam's playing well. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's been fun. But let's get off of this banging our drums now of you have to bring him back, because if you bring him back, you're going to cripple yourself again to a certain point. And look, at the end of the day, Justin Jefferson deserves that check. He's going to cost you a lot. He deserves it. He's one of the best players, if not the best player at his position in the world.
Yeah.
Sam's good, and Sam's been fun. Chip, last thing for you. So we keep talking about, and it does stink, that because the National Football League does not seed by conference, but instead has, your
Yeah.
division winner, the Vikings right now would play the Falcons in Atlanta as the 5 seed, despite the fact that they might win, let's say, 14 games.
Yeah.
The more I look at this, though, and we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, so the Packers play at Detroit tonight.
Yeah.
The Eagles are red hot. Detroit defensively is decimated.
Yeah.
Would you be shocked if at the end of the day, or the season in this case, if hypothetically the Eagles won the conference, top seed, the Vikings won the division, and Detroit gets that 5 seed?
I don't think I'd be shocked. Or Eagles are at 10 wins too, right?
Yep.
They're at 10
8
wins
consecutive
as well.
wins, 10-2 for the 10-2
I think
for
they're-
the Eagles and Vikings.
Yeah, I mean the Lions
And an
injury
easier
situation-
schedule.
An easier schedule. Lions injury situation is just, they're beat up. So now their offense is still, you still got so many playmakers there. You're still going to score a lot. But I still think if you're a Vikings fan, I think you're rooting for Packers tonight. Because I think as hard as that might be, because I think you want to try to get as many home games as you can. I think you want to try to win the division, get as many home games as you can. So I know it's a bitter pill to swallow, probably, right? Like you don't want to have to do that, but
The loss is a good loss either way, but I agree with you. I think you're right. I think you want the Packers to win. And if you look at schedules, Phillies is favorable. Like they close with 4 or 5 at home, and they close in their last 2 weeks with Dallas and the Giants. Okay. So they have a good chance to get the top seed. The Lions have a hard schedule. The Vikings is hard as well, but Detroit's still got a gauntlet left. So
and their injuries. Yeah.
I think there's a real chance that at the end of the day, that the Vikings could, if nothing else, win the division.
And Judd, how awesome is this, man? Here
great.
we are, early December. We're talking about jockeying for,
Let's talk tiebreakers, Chip.
That's right. We're gonna do that next week or the week after. These next 4 weeks are gonna be awesome. Or next 5 weeks are gonna be awesome.
Amen, brother.
All these games are gonna be so important for positioning. It's been a fun season, man.
It's been great. Absolutely. All right, gentlemen.
All right, man.
Chipper, we'll talk to you next week. Roscoe, thanks much. Purple Daily, Purple Access. It's all here at Score North.
Later.